So today we are going to see an application that interfaces with the 3D printing and it can be used in the automobile sector. So what is this application? Why it is useful in the automobile industries? Let's crack it out step by step. So initially let's clear out what the aim of this application is. We all know there is a problem is going on in the automobile industry that is nothing but demands in spare parts. So if a customer wants some particular spare parts, if it is in a demand, then the customer has to keep on waiting. So this makes the customer push towards the little bit reduced customer satisfaction rate, as well as if he wants to fulfill the customer satisfaction rate, he have to spend lots of money to deliver that spare part to the customer. So now we are going to create an application that interfaces with the 3D printing to print the spare parts in the automobile industry. So this is the aim of our project. So since you can aware of this, the title is Python based 3D printing application. So we are going to create an application based on Python. So before starting to the project, we just study what the basics of 3D printing is. What is 3D printing exactly? So 3D printing is nothing but it builds the layer by layer 3D objects. It is building a solid objects. Here the solid objects can be of any materials. For instance, plastics, metals. You can have any type of materials you want. So the major file format used in 3D printing is nothing but .stl stereolithography. So this is the major file format that is used in 3D printing. And then so you can see in the traditional ways of creating a spare parts is nothing but cutting or drilling parts of a block of raw materials. So this is how the traditional way of developing you the spare parts. But if you use the 3D printing, we can create the spare parts layer by layer from the block of materials. So there is not going to be a huge metal waste which we can prevent from the traditional way. So that is one advantage we have over 3D printing. Sorry, we have the advantage over the traditional ways of which we are going to use. So so what are the problems faced in the spare parts? For instance, like once the manufacturers of sales the cars, after sales service is going to be the major important part of the automobile industry, because maintaining the spare parts supply chain is a huge role for the automobile industries. They have to keep the profit rate high as well as the customer satisfaction rate high. So when they are going to maintain the both, they are going to increase, they are going to spend lots of money on it. For instance, if the customer needs specific spare parts and it is in a demand, so now the manufacturer has to order a huge number of spare parts, because he can't order simply some hundreds or few hundreds. Like, we have to order some huge number of spare parts. So already you will be having a stocking of remaining spare parts, and again, if he is going to order for huge production, he has to spend the money on the transportation, and if it is an urgent, he will be transporting by the air means. So it is going to cost a huge, and moreover there is going to be a lot of pollution like CO2 emissions transporting these spare parts to the customers. So this can be prevented in the 3D printing. So that's the major advantage we have. So how we can use the 3D printing over the automobile industry? So right now the 3D printing is used everywhere. For instance, automation, aerospace, medical, they are using for research purposes. But 3D printing, as days go by, like as day by day, the 3D printing quality and the processing speed is getting increased day by day. So if we are going to use this 3D printing to print the spare parts in the automobile industry, we can definitely minimize the demands of the spare parts. So that's the major concept of we are working in it. So that's the project is. So now in this project, we are clearly focusing on the production of non-metal spare parts. For instance, we are going to create a plastic spare parts. So that's just what this project is involved. We are going to create a plastic spare parts when it is in a demand. So let's see why it motivated me to create this application. So, for instance, if an automobile industry is facing, they have already a huge stock of spare parts, but they lack in one particular spare parts called fender, maybe we can keep in that way, yeah, fender. So if they are lacking in the spare parts of fender, the industry will be ordering this spare parts over to the automobile spare parts manufacturers, that they're requiring this fender, so they will be ordering for huge productions. So spending lots of materials, the transportations, and the time, everything going to impact the manufacturers, because they have to deliver it soon to to improve the customer satisfaction rate. They have to, in order to do that, they have to spend lots of money over the transportations, and once they receive the huge number of spare parts, they have to unstock it and store it in a huge place, so which will cost a lot of money. So these are the major disadvantages in the traditional ways. So what are the steps that is followed in traditional ways in 3D printing? Okay, fine. 3D printing does already exist, but it's existing in research methods. Even if they're existing for creating some parts, so what we are making, what we make differentiates from the traditional ways in 3D printing. So initially, how the 3D printing works is they will be using a software called, there's a lot of online softwares to create the 3D model design. So once this 3D model design is created, they will be slicing the 3D model into layer by layer so that it can be converted to the .stl file. So this is the second process. And the third process is when the .stl file is created, it will be forwarded to the 3D printer and it will print. So this is a huge process, right? So how our application gets easier towards the traditional ways? It's simple. So as a application developer, what I'll do is, if I'm working for a X automobile company, I'll be getting all the designs and sizes of the spare parts, and I will be designing all the designs in a 3D model, and I will be loading it in my application along with the reference number. So step one is nothing but the user will give the reference number. So if the reference number matches with the reference number which I gave in the application, yes, it's done. The second step is it prompts you to the next screen asking how many parts you want to print. Yeah, simple. Here we are doing the concurrency where we can print multiple parts simultaneously. That will reduce the demands of the spare parts. So this is our application that makes our work easier. Even a person with a little bit of knowledge of computers can able to easily print the spare parts. That's the concept behind this application. So what are the tools and technology we are using in this project development? Well, simply we are just using three tools. For instance, Vectari. This is a 3D modeling software. So here I'm using this 3D modeling software to create a 3D model design. For instance, this is the fender. This is one of the major important plastic car spare parts used in the automobile industry. So I just get the design, I'll get the measurement. So I'll be designing this in a 3D model. So once this 3D model is done using this Vectari application, now I'll be forwarding to the slicing software. So here the .stl file is created. Now you see this is a 3D model, and here you can see the final product that is in a .stl file. Now I'll move this .stl file to the application. So whenever the reference number gets matched, this .stl file sends to the 3D printer, and the 3D printer will print you the solid objects, plastic spare parts. Yes, fender is printed. Yes, the work is done. Simple, right? So let's see the how the application works in a Gantt chart. I've already predefined how this application works. So you see, these are the three major tools we use: Vectory, Simplified 3D, ByCNC. So as I said earlier, Vectory is nothing but it's a 3D model that will create you the 3D design. And Simplify 3D, it's a slicer of the 3D printer where it will slice us layer by layer. And PyCNC, it's a Python code that controls the 3D printer. So along with these codes, we will be coding our application in such a way that it gets our work easier when compared to the traditional ways. So you can see the Gantt chart here, how the process works. For instance, the preparatory phase is nothing but we have to get all the designs and designs of each and every spare parts. For instance, if a company has like 1 lakh million spare parts, like for instance 1 lakh spare parts, we have to design all these spare parts. That's where the challenging task for the programmer is. So we will be creating the 3D design for all these spare parts, and the first phase is vectoring. So once we get the designs of the spare parts, we will be converting to the 3D design and we slice it and we will store it in the application. So likewise, the process gets repeated. So you don't have to type each and every time send the file to the 3D. Instead, you can store it in an application. So that's it. Your three phases is done. So once the three phases is done, is your testing phase. So where you can test the products whether it's working finally and finally deliver the product to the desired automobile industry. This is how process works easier. And moreover, I'm using this RM file is nothing but from R Studio R Markdown. So I learned it in a big data analytics, which helps me to analyze the data very easily, so that I can able to create charts and everything using the R Markdown. So the next process is yeah, the conclusion. So when coming to the concluding, our application clearly represents that this process is easier compared to the traditional ways. The user has to just give the input as a reference number and he gets the solid objects as the output. Simple, right? So this is the faster way compared to the traditional ways which we use in 3D printing. And moreover, if we are going to follow this developing spare parts when we are in demand in the automobile manufacturer, it will clearly reduce the profit. It will clearly increase you the profit rate, as well as it will keep you the customer satisfaction rate higher, so that the products can be delivered quickly without having the metal waste, without having the transportation costs. But this process is very easier, so that we can transform the industry to the 4.0, interlinking with the 3D printing and printing the spare parts. Yes, this is the project. Thank you. Thank you.